The Olympus Trip 35 camera was found half buried in the mud, its metal cold, its lens surprisingly unbroken, as if whatever happened in those woods wanted the camera gone, but not destroyed. Sheriff Dalton lifted it with a gloved hand and whispered, "This wasn't dropped. Somebody threw it." Just a few feet away, pressed against a flat boulder, was a dark, dried red handprint, not shaped like a normal human hand, too long, too wide, too deliberate. Search teams marked the area, bagged the evidence, and sent the camera to the county photo lab. That's when the story stopped sounding like a missing teen case and started sounding like something nobody could explain. Film technicians handled the roll carefully, letting the images surface through chemical bath, layer by layer. One of them reportedly stepped back and said, "These boys weren't alone out there." Michael, standing on a fallen redwood, backpack slung over one shoulder, smiling. Nothing strange. A bridge of logs crossing Redwood Creek. Again, normal. A haze between the trees. Not smoke, not fog. More like motion captured mid-stride. Sheriff Dalton frowned. That's not a light leak. Something moved fast. This one froze the entire lab. Between the massive redwood trunks, something dark is standing. Tall, maybe 7 feet. Broad. Shape vaguely human, but not quite. Its head tilted, watching the boys. The lab technician wrote in the report, "The figure's outline is too sharp to be an illusion. No animal in this region fits the silhouette." Evan's final picture of Michael. Michael isn't smiling anymore. His eyes are wide, mouth slightly open. He's not looking at Evan. He's looking past him, at something coming up behind. The background is blurred, but the shadows between the trees look wrong, stretched, bending in angles that light shouldn't create. Black, but not blank. Enhancing the frame reveals faint vertical lines, like bark, and something else. A hand, huge, pressed across the lens as if the camera was grabbed mid-photo. Finger marks run across the glass, long, jagged, and uneven. And then the roll ends, as if someone just snatched the boys away in that moment. The Forbidden Zone. After reviewing the photos, Dalton ordered the search to expand north into an area locals called the Forbidden Bend, an unmarked region near Redwood Creek where the forest grows too dense and the winds never reach the ground. Rangers usually avoided it. One ranger, Dave Harlow, 22 at the time, had his own warning. That part of the forest feels wrong. No birds, no bugs, no sound, like the woods are holding their breath. But Dalton didn't believe in superstition. He believed in footprints, evidence, and direction. So the team moved deeper. That's when things started getting unexplainable. Footprints that shouldn't stop. Half a mile north, search dogs picked up a scent trail. The soil was soft, easy for tracks to imprint. 2 sets of teenage shoe prints, consistent stride, no sign of struggle. And then they just stopped, mid-stride, like the boys stepped forward and were lifted straight into the air. No drag marks, no animal tracks, nothing disturbed around them. Deputy Simmons stared for a long time, whispering, "People don't vanish upward." But whatever happened here did. Something moving between the trees. As the team pushed deeper into the Forbidden Bend, Ranger Harlow radioed in, "Dalton, something's moving out here. It's big, and it's staying between the trees, like it's pacing us." Dalton asked for its location. All he got back was, It knows we're here. Static. Then silence. The team found Harlow 5 minutes later, alive but shaken. He claimed something tall moved parallel to them, always hiding behind the thick trunks, always one step ahead. Dalton wrote it off as stress, but every ranger present swore they heard the same thing: a low, heavy breathing, not from any known animal, something that exhaled like a lung full of gravel. The impossible trail. Just when the team thought they'd hit a dead end, one of the dogs began barking uncontrollably. It stood near a clearing no one had noticed, a narrow passage carved between massive roots and fallen trunks. It looked like a tunnel made by something very large moving through repeatedly. The air inside was colder, unnaturally cold. Sheriff Dalton stepped forward, shining his flashlight. He muttered, "This place wasn't made by nature." And the trail led deeper, much deeper, straight into the darkest part of Redwood Creek where, according to old ranger logs, at least 7 missing person cases had occurred since 1951. The same place locals avoided, the same place the teens photographed. The trail looked fresh, not animal, not human. Something massive had forced its way through the undergrowth, bending vegetation, uprooting shrubs, leaving a narrow corridor of crushed moss and broken twigs. And that corridor led deeper into the part of Redwood Creek people avoided, even in daylight. Sheriff Dalton took point. Ranger Harlow followed last, eyes constantly darting at the tree line, because he knew something was out there, something that moved when the team did, and stopped every time they turned around. They walked for 5 minutes, then 10, then 15, and with every step the forest grew quieter, a suffocating, unnatural silence where even wind refused to breathe. Dalton whispered, "Keep your voices low." Whatever made this path didn't want to be followed. No one disagreed. The deeper they went, the narrower the trail became. The air cooled sharply, like walking into a freezer tucked inside the forest. That's when Ranger Harlow froze in his tracks. He raised his hand. Everyone stopped. At first, the team thought they were hearing leaves rustling, but there was no wind. Then it became clear. Voices, soft, layered, indistinguishable. Not ahead of them, not behind. Along the trees on both sides, something, or several somethings, were whispering. Dalton mouthed silently, "You hearing that?" Every ranger nodded. The whispers didn't sound human. They were too low, too synchronized, as if the forest itself was speaking in a language older than English. One ranger quietly switched off his flashlight. Big mistake, because the moment the light went out, the whispering stopped. Dead silence, and something heavy shuffled closer. When the flashlight snapped back on, the trees looked normal again, but every man felt the same thing. They were being circled. 20 yards ahead, Deputy Simmons spotted something half buried under a mound of dead leaves. A backpack, blue, faded, strapped tightly shut, but torn in 2 places like it had been dragged. "Evans," Dalton muttered after checking the school pin stitched on the back. They unzipped it slowly. Inside, 2 film canisters, a water flask dented inward, a crushed pack of gum, a notebook, pages ripped halfway out, and a Polaroid picture, bent, muddy, but intact. Dalton wiped the photo with his sleeve. It showed Evan, eyes wide, face pale, one hand lifted as if shielding himself. Behind him, barely visible, was a tall shadow between the redwood trunks. The same shape from the earlier photos, but this time, closer. Too close. Deputy Simmons whispered. They were running from it. Dalton didn't respond. He just closed the backpack and said, "We're not alone out here." 10 minutes deeper. The trail ended at a clearing none of the rangers recognized. The soil was overturned, freshly disturbed. In the middle of the clearing lay a ring, a perfect geometric ring, made of bones. Not human bones, not fully animal either. Too thick, too long, too clean, arranged deliberately, like something intelligent placed them there. Dalton kneeled, examining one of the bones. It was smooth, polished, stripped of any tissue, not even a tooth mark. Ranger Harlow backed away, mumbling, "Animals don't make patterns. Not like this. This is a warning." But who or what was it meant for? Before anyone could speak again, the trees behind them shook violently. Once, then again, something big was moving, coming closer. The team retreated to the edge of the clearing, flashlights scanning. Deputy Simmons pointed at a massive redwood trunk. 4 deep gouges ran down its side. Not scratches, claw marks, each one nearly a foot long. And they were fresh. Sap bled from the wounds, glistening under the flashlight beams. Dalton touched the sap. It was warm. He looked at the team and said the words nobody wanted to hear. It was here, recently. Before anyone could respond, the sound came. A low, dragging exhale, like a giant filling its lungs, right behind the tree line. One ranger aimed his light in that direction. Trees, shadows, nothing else. But when he moved the beam back, one of the claw marks was new, dripping. The thing had just scratched the tree and vanished again. Deputy Simmons whispered, "It's watching us." Everyone knew he was right. The team realizes they're being hunted. Dalton ordered an immediate fallback toward the main trail. Nobody argued. As they moved, the forest changed. The silence deepened. The trees seemed to lean inward, narrowing the space. Ranger Harlow radioed, "Movement, left side, tall, fast." Another ranger whispered, "Something's behind us." Then all radios crackled at once, drowning in static. Not random static, but a rhythmic, pulsing interference, almost like breathing. Dalton shouted, "Keep moving! Stay together!" The whole forest erupted. Branches snapped behind them, one after another, growing louder. Heavy footsteps, deliberate, pacing them. Something was chasing, not running, not charging, just following. Close, too close. Harlow turned around for a split second and instantly regretted it. He saw a silhouette, tall, bent at the shoulders, broad as 2 men, move between the trunks. 1 step, 2. Then it melted into the darkness again, like it belonged there. Dalton grabbed Harlow's collar. "Don't look back, keep going." But the footsteps behind them sped up, matching their pace, echoing it, studying them, like a predator that enjoyed the chase. A predator that knew the forest, knew every hiding place, every advantage, and understood one thing perfectly: none of them belonged out here. The last sound before escape. Just when the team reached the boundary of the forbidden bend, the sound came. A deep, guttural roar that vibrated through the soil itself. Not an animal, not human, something ancient, enormous, hungry. The search team didn't look back. They sprinted, bursting from the tree line into the safer part of Redwood Creek, where wind suddenly existed again and birds finally dared to make noise. Only when they regrouped did Dalton speak, his voice shaking. "Whatever took those boys, it's still out there." And for the first time in his career, he looked truly afraid. The search team made it back to the command post at 5:42 p.m. No one spoke for several minutes. Their uniforms were torn, their faces pale, and the silence in the post felt heavier than the forest itself. Dalton finally broke it. "Seal this area. No civilians, no hikers. Nobody goes in there tonight." He didn't explain why. He didn't have to. Everyone who heard that roar knew the forest wasn't empty. The forensic team arrives. At dawn, a small forensic unit arrived from Humboldt County. They didn't know the details, just that 2 teenagers were missing and evidence might be deep inside the woods. Dalton led them to the bone circle. They took samples, photos, soil measurements. 10 minutes in, one forensic analyst paused and said, "These aren't animal bones. These are arranged." Dalton nodded. She continued, "Patterns like this usually relate to behavioral territory, marking, warning, or—" She stopped. Dalton stared. "Or what?" The analyst hesitated. "Or displays meant to intimidate." That word hung in the air like a threat. The impossible footprints. Further inside the clearing, one technician crouched over the ground. He had found footprints, but not human, and not a known animal either. Each track was nearly 18 inches long, 4 toe-like depressions, each ending in a sharp point. The stride length, 6 feet. 6. Dalton bent down beside the prints. The technician whispered, "These are fresh, hours old." The prints continued in a straight line across the clearing, and then abruptly stopped. No turn, no jump, no sign of retreat. They simply ended. It was physically impossible. Dalton whispered, "Where the hell did it go?" No one answered, because none of them could. The FBI arrives without warning. At 11:14 a.m., 2 unmarked SUVs rolled into the ranger station. 4 agents stepped out, plain clothes, no smiles, no introductions. Their leader produced a folder stamped. Dalton blinked. "Ongoing? What do you mean, ongoing?" The agent replied calmly, "This is not the first disappearance in this area." He opened the file. Inside were photographs, old, faded, black and white. Each image showed different victims. A 14-year-old girl missing in 1972. A hunter last seen in 1974. A botanist who vanished in 1976. And a local logger gone in 1977. All missing around Redwood Creek. All last seen near the same forbidden zone. All cases officially closed as presumed lost in terrain. But the FBI documents called them something else. Cluster events. Dalton felt a chill. "Cluster of what?" he whispered. The agent shut the folder. "Disappearances with identical environmental anomalies." "What anomalies?" The agent glanced at the forest. "You already know." The Redwood Watcher. Local legend or eyewitness account? The FBI interviewed forest locals that afternoon. Most refused to speak. One old logger finally agreed, on the condition his name never be recorded. He sat on a bench outside the ranger station, staring into the dark tree line while he spoke. "People think the forest is just trees," he muttered, "but this place, it watches back." Dalton exchanged a look with the FBI agent. The logger continued, "We call it the Watcher. Tall as the old growth, shoulders like a bear, but moves like a man. Sometimes you see it between the trunks. Sometimes you don't. But you always feel it. The FBI agent leaned forward. Have you seen it? The logger swallowed hard. Once, when I was a kid. It was standing just far enough to pretend I couldn't see it, but close enough to let me know it was real. Dalton asked, "What does it want?" The old man's face tightened. Not land, not food. It wants silence. Silence? Dalton frowned. What does that mean? The logger's eyes never left the trees. It doesn't like people shouting for help. The ranger who disappeared in 1981. Late afternoon, one FBI agent called Dalton aside. "Sheriff, we found something else in our archives." He handed Dalton an envelope. Inside was a short note written in a ranger's logbook. Ranger Daniel Cortez, missing since June 4th, 1981. The final entry in his field notebook read, "Something is walking parallel to my patrol line. Same speed, same pauses. Every time I stop, the forest stops. Every time I turn, it hides behind the redwoods. I think it's curious, or waiting." Below that, one last line, scribbled fast, ink smeared. "If anyone finds this, don't follow the broken trees." Dalton felt his stomach twist. Broken trees. The exact path Evan and Mark followed in 1977. The exact path the search team followed the previous night. He asked the FBI agent, "Why didn't anyone tell us about this?" The agent pocketed the envelope. "Because Redwood Creek has patterns, Sheriff. Patterns we don't want the public to notice." Just before sunset, the forensic team returned with a new finding. During soil analysis, they had discovered something impossible. Human fibers. But not on the ground, not on a branch. Embedded into the bark of a redwood tree, 6 feet above the forest floor. Like someone, or something, had thrown a human body against it with immense force. Dalton stared at the samples. Flesh, hair, fabric. A ranger whispered, "Are these the boys?" The forensic analyst shook her head. "No, this tissue is older." "How old?" Dalton asked. She hesitated. "Based on decomposition, around 5 to 6 years. Dalton felt his throat tighten. 1971 to 1972, the year the first person in the cluster vanished. The FBI shuts down the case. At 9:03 p.m., the FBI officially declared, "All further search operations are suspended." Dalton stepped forward angrily. "You're giving up on the boys?" The lead agent stared at him with a blank, unreadable expression. "We're not giving up. We're preventing more bodies." Dalton clenched his jaw. "And what do I tell the families?" The agent replied, "Tell them the forest swallowed the evidence, because that's the truth." The final night at Redwood Creek. The search team slept at the ranger station that night, though few actually slept. Wind rattled the windows, branches tapped the glass, and sometime around 3:17 a.m., Ranger Harlow woke to a faint sound from the tree line. Knock, knock, knock. The same rhythm, same spacing, same slow, deliberate pace. He sat up, heart pounding. Through the window, at the edge of the floodlight's reach, he saw a shape. Tall, still, watching, just standing between the trunks, not moving, not hiding, just letting him know it was still there. And then, as the floodlight flickered once, the shape turned and slipped back into the forest, leaving only silence behind. Fog curled around Redwood Creek that night like a living breath, slow, deliberate, patient. Michael and Sarah pushed deeper into the woodland trench, their flashlight beams thin as needles against the dark. Even the trees felt different here, as if something had trained them to grow in unnatural angles. The sound of the stream had faded. The forest was too quiet. Even silence had a pulse here. Ahead, the path dipped, swallowed by a bowl-shaped ravine. Sarah stopped at its edge. "Do you smell that?" she whispered. Michael inhaled. A faint metallic tang hovered in the air, like old film developing fluid mixed with wet stone. "Yeah," he muttered. "Same smell from the boys' abandoned campsite." Sarah opened her backpack and pulled out the camera, the one found with the Redwood Creek teens in '77. The shutter had long jammed, and the enamel had chipped, but the lens still carried a predatory glint when the light hit it. The last photo the boys took, the one with the dark silhouette, seemed to hum with static every time she touched it. Sarah slid the camera back in the bag. "Let's move." The two descended into the hollow. The soil felt soft, almost plush, like it had been tilled recently. Michael's boot sank half an inch deeper than expected. He froze. This ground wasn't disturbed recently. This is years of decay. Something's buried here. Before Sarah could respond, a wooden sign emerged from the mist, hand-carved, weather-worn, crooked. Michael exhaled sharply. "That's it. The year. The boys." Sarah walked around the sign, running her hand across the moss-coated wood. Why close it permanently? Over 2 missing teens? Michael shook his head. "You only close ground like this when you're afraid of what's underneath." He aimed his flashlight ahead, and the beam landed on a structure. A cabin stood at the ravine's center, unmarked, unmapped. Wood blackened not by fire, but by age. An age that didn't match any documented building in the area. No path led to it. No smoke. No sign of life. As they approached, the temperature plummeted. Their breath turned to cold ribbons in the air. Sarah's voice trembled. "Michael, look." Behind the cabin, almost hidden by redwood roots, stood 3 wooden totems, carved with faces elongated beyond human proportion. Hollow eyes, no mouths, their spines twisted like ropes. Michael raised his camera and snapped a photo. A sharp crack echoed from the cabin, like someone or something had stepped on old wood. Sarah grabbed his sleeve. "Tell me that was you." He shook his head slowly. The door wasn't locked. It swung inward with a sickly groan, revealing a room almost perfectly preserved. Dust lay like winter across the floor. Shelves lined with old Forest Survey logs. A desk with a cracked lamp. A pinned map of Redwood Creek, dated 1976. Sarah approached the desk. "Mike, there's a folder." She lifted it carefully. Across the cover, written in fading black marker, Case C, Redwood Teen Incident, 1977. Evidence withheld. Do not release. Michael's heart beat once, heavy and hollow, as if something inside him had dropped. He opened the folder. Inside were 5 photographs, each one wrong. Two boys, David Morgan and Alex Raines, standing by the creek, smiling. Normal. Daylight. The same boys, later that evening, looking past the camera at something unseen. Their expressions changed. Alert. Confused. A shot of the trees bending inward, forming a shape like a doorway. No wind. A blurry, dark form, half hidden behind the cedars. Too tall. Too thin. Its edges looked smudged, as if it wasn't fully in the frame of reality. The final photo. The boys running. Fear carved across their faces. Behind them, nothing visible. But the shadows looked stretched, like hands reaching. Sarah lifted the last picture toward her flashlight. These were taken seconds before they vanished. A soft tap echoed behind them. Then another. Slow. Measured. As if claws, long ones, were clicking against the cabin's outer wall. Michael raised his light and pointed it at the window. Something leaned across the glass. Just a flash, but enough. A tall shape, humanoid only in outline, drifted between the trees. It didn't walk. It slid, bending around obstacles as if made of smoke wearing skin. Sarah gasped and stumbled backward. It saw us. Outside, the tapping grew faster. Then it stopped. The window glass frosted suddenly, a thin ice web crawling from the edges inward. And then, words formed in the frost, not written by a human hand, not written at all, more like etched by breath. Sarah clamped a hand over her mouth. Michael whispered, voice shaking, "Backpack. Now we move."